Bogdanov affirms the presence of destructive forces in the Syrian opposition that are aware they cannot reach power through elections. The coalition of the Peaceful Change Forces, comprising several parties and political forces, is announced in Damascus. And the Egyptian Military Council announces the death of 9 people and the injury of more than 160 in Al-Abrash Square. Good afternoon, you're watching News in English live on Syrian TV. Many thanks for joining us. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister, the Russian President's Special Envoy to the Middle East, Mr. Mikhail Bogdanov, has referred to destructive forces in the Syrian opposition which do not want any reforms and are aware they cannot get to power through elections. Russia Today website has quoted Bogdanov as saying that the Syrian opposition must speak one language and in a constructive way. He pointed out that the opposition representation is not clear, and the parliamentary elections to be held on the 7th of this month would determine the form of parliament and government. He added his country is in contact with the various Syrian opposition groups who should meet somewhere in order to hold a conference that reaches an agreement on a unified stand regarding dialogue with the government. He added his country welcomes such initiatives as they would help ease the situation. Bogdanov reiterated Russia's stand towards the crisis in Syria, asserting that the decisions concerning Syria's future should not be imposed from abroad. A delegation of UN monitors visited today the Warkazo and Al-Arba'in neighborhoods in the city of Hama. Meanwhile, the UN Observers Team's spokesperson, Niraj Singh, said the number of the UN Observers Advance Team has been completed after the last batch of observers arrived in Syria coming from the participating countries. Singh said 31 observers have so far arrived in Syria and are working in Homs, Hama, Dar'a and the areas adjacent to Damascus. Baba Amro and Al-Inshaat neighborhoods in Homs witnessed vibrant reconstruction works to repair damages caused by the armed terrorist groups.
As part of their keenness to restore power to all damaged areas in Homs, the General Establishment of Electricity, along with Homs Electricity Company, continued work on repairing damages inflicted on the electricity network by armed terrorist groups in the areas of Baba Amr, Jurat Al-Rayes and Al-Inshaat.
We are here to supervise the reconstruction and the repair works of the electricity grid that was badly damaged and sabotaged by the armed terrorist groups. 95% of the repair works have been achieved, and within 4 days of service, they will be back in Baba Amr and the Inshaat area. Experts at the General Establishment of Electricity worked hard to restore the power to the damaged networks in all the areas as experts' team began working to restore electricity to the neighborhoods of Bab Sba, Deir al-Balda, al-Bayada and Karm al-Zaytun.
It is worth mentioning that the repair and construction works are almost complete, with power restored to many neighborhoods and areas affected by the terrorist attacks.
The coalition of the Peaceful Change Forces, which includes 6 opposition parties, agreed on a 10-point solution for the Syrian crisis. A statement released by the coalition affirmed its rejection of military intervention and acceptance of any political solution. They affirmed the importance of launching all kinds of democratic work to confront the adverse repercussions of the crisis, demanding for serious work to find a way out of it. They referred that the solution should guarantee the country's unity, peace, and achieve the comprehensive peaceful change. Speaker of the People's Assembly Mahmoud Al-Abrash briefed a delegation of the Syrian community in Italy and the accompanying Italian media delegation on the killing and sabotage acts committed by the armed terrorist groups which serve foreign agendas. Al-Abrash also answered the delegation members' questions on the government's preparations for the People's Assembly elections and the structure of the political parties which participate in the elections. The questions also tackled the Syrian government's cooperation with the International Observers Mission and the measures taken to deal with the armed terrorist groups. He said that Syria is optimistic about the People's Assembly elections scheduled on May 7th under a new constitution and an elections law that guarantees political pluralism. The Minister of Information, Dr. Adnan Mahmoud, affirmed during his meeting with the delegation the necessity of contacts and communication between the Syrian people and the expatriates. He stressed that Syria is completely committed to Annan's plan, pointing out that the success of the plan requires tangible steps from the armed groups and the states that support them. He stressed that these groups committed 1,930 violations of the ceasefire, carrying out crimes against citizens, law enforcement forces, and private and public properties. He stressed that the forthcoming People's Assembly elections constitute the start of a new stage, referring that these elections will take place in a free atmosphere under judicial supervision. During their meeting with the Bishop Hazim IV, members of the delegation were briefed on the peaceful coexistence Syria enjoys and the awareness of its people towards the conspiracies being hatched against their country. Bishop Hazim affirmed that the Syrians themselves are capable to resolve their problems without any foreign interference. The recent events in Al-Abbasiyya Square in Cairo have claimed the lives of 9 people and injured more than 168 others. This was reported by a member of the higher command of the Egyptian Armed Forces, Assistant Defense Minister Major General Muhammad Al-Assar. Commenting on Al-Abbasiyya events in a press conference he held today, Al-Assar said there had been attempts to reach Khalifa al-Ma'mun Street in the direction of the Ministry of Defense, which caused clashes to erupt between the protesters and the Abbasiyya residents. He said the sit-in there was a mistake because it was close to the Ministry of Defense and the military installations. Assar added that the Armed Forces High Command was committed to honest presidential elections and to the handing of power before the 30th of June 2012. A mass hunger strike is spreading across Israeli prisons for the second consecutive week, with some 2,000 Palestinians out of 4,700 protesting for their basic rights. These demands include a number of legitimate human rights under international law, like the abolition of solitary confinement, being a dangerous form of torture with no security or legal justification and contrary to international humanitarian law and all international conventions that prohibit torture. They're also demanding an end to the prohibition of family visits to the prisoners from Gaza for more than 7 years, as well as interference with family visitors from the West Bank under the pretext of security reasons. The prisoners also call for their rights of education and proper health conditions. Well, we've reached the end of this news bulletin. For more news, log on to our website in English, syriaonline.sy. I'll leave you now with the Irado and Economy News.